Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be returning as working members of the royal family. Prince Harry and Meghan stepped down from royal duties.
What if one of the most talked about royal titles in the world is on the verge of being erased by law? Behind closed doors, powerful voices in British Parliament are moving to strip Meghan Markle of the Duchess of Sussex title.
I think, Sophie, that both statements are revealing of the underlying tensions and the completely mismatched ambitions. The Queen's position is very straightforward. You cannot do and just pick the bits of royal life.
This isn't tabloid drama. It's real, it's political, and it could change the monarchy forever. Why now? What triggered this historic shift? And could Prince Harry be next? Prince William is reportedly working behind the scenes on a plan that could see Prince Harry and Meghan Markle officially stripped of their remaining royal titles. Although nothing has been confirmed by Kensington Palace, multiple insiders close to the royal household have suggested that conversations are taking place about how to address the ongoing use of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, especially in light of recent controversies. This development didn't start with a headline or a viral tweet. It began quietly, with murmurs in Westminster and subtle shifts in tone among political and royal observers. For months, there's been growing tension between what the Sussexes have chosen to do since stepping back from official duties and what the royal family, and indeed the British system, considers acceptable use of royal status. At the center of the issue is Meghan Markle's continued use of the title Duchess of Sussex, despite a 2020 agreement with Queen Elizabeth II that stated she and Prince Harry would not use their HRH, Her Royal Highness titles, after leaving their roles as working royals. Although they were not stripped of the titles formally, the understanding was that they would no longer refer to themselves as such in professional or commercial settings. However, in recent months, Meghan's public appearances and branding choices have reignited public debate. From event speeches to media introductions, the Duchess title continues to be attached to her name. While many supporters argue she's simply using the title she was given by marriage, critics say that using a noble designation while no longer serving the crown is misleading and potentially damaging to the monarchy's reputation. What has escalated the situation is that the criticism isn't just coming from online forums or social media influencers anymore. A formal motion has reportedly been introduced in the House of Lords, the upper chamber of the UK Parliament, asking that Meghan Markle's title be reviewed and potentially removed. This is not a routine occurrence. The House of Lords, while often seen as traditional and ceremonial, rarely takes direct action on issues related to individual members of the royal family unless there's significant constitutional concern. One source described this as the system striking back, an indication that the machinery of British political and legal power is starting to engage with what has mostly been considered a royal family matter until now. In the eyes of many MPs and lords, what began as a family decision is now a matter of national interest due to the use of titles that carry legal and diplomatic weight. The push for change appears to be gathering bipartisan support. Members from both Conservative and Labour benches have reportedly expressed their agreement with reviewing the Sussex titles. That kind of political consensus in Britain is relatively rare, especially on issues tied to tradition and the monarchy. While there's no official government position yet, the fact that Parliament is actively discussing it is significant in itself. The quiet approach taken in the early stages seems to have been intentional. According to sources close to senior royals, including Prince William, the preference was always to handle the situation discreetly. The late Queen was known for her never complain, never explain approach, and that tone has largely continued under King Charles III. But the recent moves in Parliament suggest that keeping quiet may no longer be a viable strategy. While the specific proposal in the House of Lords hasn't been publicly published in full, it's believed to focus on the legal standing of noble titles and whether they can be used by individuals no longer performing official duties. It's not about personal attacks or settling family scores. It's about whether titles granted by the crown should come with ongoing responsibilities. At the same time, the public mood is playing a big role in shaping this conversation. Polling in the UK has shown a notable shift in sentiment. Many people feel that if someone no longer represents the country in an official capacity, they shouldn't be using a title that implies otherwise. This is especially important when those titles appear in media, public appearances, or on merchandise. The use of titles in such settings can create confusion about someone's role, authority, and affiliation with the royal family. Supporters of the motion argue that it could mislead international audiences into thinking the Sussexes are still acting on behalf of the crown, when in fact they are private citizens. This kind of confusion, according to political figures, could have diplomatic consequences. It's worth noting that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have repeatedly stated that they left royal duties to gain more freedom and privacy for their family. Since relocating to the United States, they've established their own production company, signed deals with major platforms like Netflix and Spotify, and launched various charitable projects through their Archewell Foundation. They've also been open about the challenges they faced while working within the royal family, particularly around mental health, media pressure, and what they've described as systemic bias within the institution. While those discussions have been welcomed by many who value transparency and modernization, they've also triggered backlash from those who feel that stepping back from royal life should also mean giving up any official association with it, including titles. That's why the current movement in Parliament feels like a turning point. The motion itself doesn't come with immediate legal force, but it opens the door to future legislation or a formal review of title rules. Experts in constitutional law say that any change to noble titles, especially those tied to peerages like Duke or Duchess, would require either a direct royal decree or a new act of Parliament. Neither is a simple process. Still, the fact that these mechanisms are even being discussed publicly is a major shift. For years, debates around Harry and Meghan were largely confined to media outlets, interviews, or public opinion polls. Now the conversation has entered a formal institutional phase. Inside Buckingham Palace, there's reportedly a mix of frustration and caution. The palace is said to be aware of the public's changing views and the risk of appearing out of touch. At the same time, they're wary of setting a precedent that could politicize royal titles or make them seem like rewards that can be revoked at will. Prince William, as next in line to the throne, has taken on a growing leadership role within the family. While he has not spoken publicly about the titles issue, some royal correspondents believe he's deeply involved in private discussions on how to protect the integrity of the monarchy moving forward. According to one senior source, the aim is not revenge or punishment, it's about clarity and consistency. In that context, the developments in Westminster are likely being watched very closely by royal advisors. They may be seeing this motion not just as a political statement, but as an opportunity to resolve a long-standing tension in a formal and legally sound way. As the quiet debate around Meghan Markle's title began to turn into a louder conversation, the situation quickly gained momentum. What had started as subtle discontent inside Westminster began shifting into open political discussion. The core issue, according to several peers and insiders, was no longer just about personal disagreements or royal family drama. It had become a matter of legal and diplomatic importance. The discussion moved from whispers to structured debate, and the use of royal titles outside official duties was no longer being treated as a gray area. The turning point came after what many are now referring to as the Nigeria trip. In early 2024, Prince Harry and Meghan made a high-profile visit to Nigeria where they attended public events, met with military leaders, and gave speeches that closely resembled those traditionally given by working royals. They wore traditional clothing, posed for photographs with government officials, and were welcomed with formal ceremonies that created the impression of an official diplomatic visit. What's important is that the visit wasn't sanctioned by the UK government, nor was it cleared with Buckingham Palace or the Foreign Office. It was, by all accounts, a private trip. However, the way it was presented, in the media and on social platforms, blurred the lines between private citizens and official representatives of the monarchy. That, according to sources familiar with discussions inside the House of Lords, was the final straw for many members of Parliament. The reaction was swift. Within weeks of the Nigeria trip, a formal petition was launched in the House of Lords to consider stripping Meghan Markle of her Duchess of Sussex title. This was not a symbolic move. While a petition alone does not change royal status, it can initiate a process that may lead to legal changes, especially if it garners enough political and public support. Lords from both major parties, Conservative and Labour, publicly supported the petition, which made it even more significant. In a deeply divided political climate, finding common ground on royal protocol is rare, and that bipartisan backing gave the motion real weight. It's also worth noting that this wasn't an effort driven by tabloid headlines or public outrage alone. Legal scholars and constitutional experts began weighing in as well, pointing to long-standing British laws that govern the use of noble titles, particularly when it comes to using them for commercial or unofficial diplomatic purposes. One piece of legislation frequently mentioned is the Royal Titles Act of 1917, which outlines restrictions on how royal designations can be used and under what conditions they can be withdrawn. According to legal commentary that followed the petition, Meghan's continued use of her Duchess title while engaging in public-facing roles that appear political or commercial in nature could be interpreted as a violation of these traditional rules. While the legal interpretation is still debated, the fact that respected legal minds were discussing it in public forums only added to the seriousness of the issue. At the same time, a wave of public opinion began to form. A YouGov poll conducted in May 2025 found that 77% of British respondents believed Meghan Markle should lose her Duchess of Sussex title. That number, described by some political analysts as remarkable, shows just how far public sentiment has shifted. Even more notable was the fact that support for removing Prince Harry's titles was also high, though not as strong. 61% of people polled said they believed he too should no longer use his royal designations. This broad support crosses generational and political lines. Voters from all major parties, whether conservative, centrist, or progressive, seem to agree that royal titles carry a level of meaning that should be respected. Many people now view these titles as more than ceremonial. They see them as symbols of duty and public service. When someone stops performing those duties, many argue the title should no longer apply. Adding to the debate was a viral clip that circulated around the same time. Meghan Markle was caught on camera at a Beyoncé concert in Los Angeles, laughing and shouting, "You know I'm Sussex now," while joking with actress Mindy Kaling. Though the moment seemed casual and lighthearted, it was seized upon by critics and political commentators alike. For those in Westminster already debating the issue, it became evidence that Meghan was using her title as a personal brand rather than a public role. According to one member of the House of Lords, the video symbolized a crass trivialization of noble status. This perception of a royal title being turned into a social media brand or business tool was key to the growing support for the petition. Some lords pointed out that the monarchy has always relied on a fine balance of tradition, discretion, and public service. They argued that when those values are ignored or undermined, the institution itself is weakened. Throughout this growing discussion, Buckingham Palace remained quiet. Neither King Charles III nor Prince William commented publicly on the petition or on Meghan and Harry's use of their titles. The palace's long-standing policy of staying out of political or legal debates appears to be holding, even as this issue reaches new heights. However, insiders suggest that the palace is closely monitoring the situation and considering its own options for how to respond if the legal process moves forward. Behind the scenes, it's believed that Prince William has been involved in conversations about the future of royal titles. According to reports from journalists who regularly cover the royal household, William is deeply aware of how public trust in the monarchy depends on clarity, consistency, and respect for tradition. One anonymous source close to the royal family told a British media outlet that William's focus is not on punishing Meghan and Harry personally, but rather on protecting the integrity of the institution he will one day lead. The real complication lies in the legal process. Royal titles are not simply removed with a vote or a petition. Because they are granted by the monarch, They require either a formal royal decree or an act of parliament to be legally revoked. Both options come with political and constitutional implications. If Parliament were to pass legislation on noble titles, it could set a precedent that future governments might use more freely, something the monarchy has historically tried to avoid. Still, the current movement has made one thing clear: the public appetite for reform is growing. Many people feel that the royal institution needs to better define who can use titles, under what circumstances, and for how long after stepping away from royal duties. The ambiguity around half-in, half-out arrangements has created confusion for years. Now that confusion has turned into frustration, and Parliament is taking notice. It's also important to point out that this isn't just about Meghan Markle personally. The petition may be focused on her title, but the broader conversation includes how all royal titles are managed in the modern age. If the system doesn't evolve, many worry it could lose credibility. In a time when transparency and accountability are increasingly expected from public figures, the royal family is facing pressure to align with these values. When Meghan and Harry stepped back from their roles as working royals in early 2020, part of the agreement with Buckingham Palace was that they would no longer use their HRH, His or Her Royal Highness titles. They were still allowed to keep their titles as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but there was a clear understanding that those titles would not be used in any way that might suggest they were still officially representing the monarchy. At the time, Queen Elizabeth II made it clear that, while they remained much-loved members of the family, they could not continue with half-in, half-out arrangements. However, in the years that followed, Meghan and Harry entered into several high-profile media deals. Their partnerships with platforms like Spotify, Netflix, and Penguin Random House were introduced to the public with titles attached. The Netflix documentary series they produced began with a striking black-and-white opening that read, "Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex." The titles weren't hidden or downplayed. They were front and center. For some, this was simply a matter of identity. After all, they had not been formally stripped of their titles. But for others, including many in the British press and some members of Parliament, it signaled something more troubling: the use of a royal title as part of a commercial strategy. Critics argued that the Duchess title had effectively become a brand, and not just any brand, but one built on the status, tradition, and global recognition of the British monarchy. This concern wasn't limited to news outlets or public commentary. The House of Lords petition launched against Meghan's title explicitly references what it calls the blatant commercialization of noble status. According to the wording in the petition, Meghan and Harry's media ventures not only used their titles for promotion, but also framed their content around their royal past. The Netflix series, for example, explored their time in the royal family, their challenges with the press, and their eventual exit from royal life, all while being presented under titles granted by the monarchy. This blend of personal storytelling and royal branding raised legal and ethical questions. Could a title of nobility, given by the crown, be used as part of a marketing campaign? Could it appear in the opening credits of a paid streaming show? These questions were no longer just hypothetical. Legal experts began analyzing how such use might fit within the framework of British law, including statutes like the Royal Titles Act of 1917, which governs how and when royal styles may be used. In parallel, Meghan launched her podcast, Archetypes, on Spotify, a show that frequently referenced her experiences as a royal. She spoke about her time in the palace, her struggles with mental health, and the media's portrayal of her. In one widely discussed episode, she mentioned how she was treated differently due to race and gender, sparking further debate over how much of the royal family's internal affairs should be discussed in public formats, especially when done under a title that implies a continuing connection to the monarchy. What made the situation more complex was the lack of clear rules. Unlike political titles, royal peerages are often governed by tradition and royal discretion, rather than detailed legal frameworks. As a result, the boundaries around what is appropriate or inappropriate use are not always obvious. This gray area gave rise to a growing feeling among some British lawmakers and commentators that the rules needed to be redefined for the modern world. Even before the Netflix and Spotify projects, Harry and Meghan had attempted to trademark several brand names, including Archewell and Sussex Royal. While the Archewell trademark was ultimately allowed, the couple's efforts to trademark Sussex Royal were blocked after a personal intervention from Queen Elizabeth II, who reportedly made it clear that the word royal should not appear on merchandise or media platforms not directly tied to the institution. This was a key moment that signaled the monarchy's discomfort with how titles were being applied outside of traditional contexts. The branding efforts didn't end there. Meghan and Harry's foundation, their website, their public statements, all frequently used the Sussex name. The House of Lords petition lists these examples as part of its case that Meghan, in particular, has turned her title into a commercial vehicle. One lord was quoted as saying, "This is no longer a matter of taste, it is a matter of precedent. If noble titles can be used this way, then the honor system loses meaning." The petition also refers to what it calls Meghan's celebrity-style media presence. Her appearances on talk shows, red carpets, and high-profile interviews often included the Duchess title in lower thirds or introductions. Meghan's supporters argue that this is standard practice. She was given the title legally, and it's part of her identity. But critics maintain that continuing to use it in these ways contradicts the agreement made when she stepped away from royal duties. Adding to the controversy was a 2023 incident in New York, where Meghan and Harry claimed they were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase with paparazzi. The New York Police Department later stated that while there was certainly media interest, the situation had been exaggerated. This, too, was referenced in the growing public discussion about how the couple navigates fame, publicity, and their ongoing connection to royal identity. Several lords made comparisons between Meghan and other lesser-known royals, such as Princess Alexandra or the Duke of Gloucester, who continue to serve quietly without ever appearing in the media spotlight. The implication was that nobility should come with a sense of restraint and service, not media attention or commercial branding. One of the strongest claims in the petition is that Meghan's ongoing public use of her title risks blurring the line between private citizen and public representative. This is especially relevant in international settings, where the average person or media outlet may not fully understand the couple's current status. To many viewers abroad, Meghan is still a duchess, a symbol of the British monarchy, and that perception, according to lawmakers, could cause diplomatic confusion. It's this international element that particularly worries some members of Parliament. When Harry and Meghan appear on global platforms, attend events, or give speeches, they often do so with the aura of royalty. Even if they clarify they're no longer working royals, the presence of their titles can give a different impression. That's what has led some to call for stronger legal language to prevent titles from being used in ways that might mislead the public or serve personal business interests. Among the most striking developments in this debate is the way Parliament has framed its concerns. According to multiple reports, members of the House of Lords are no longer treating the issue as a personal conflict or a cultural controversy. Instead, they've presented it as a constitutional challenge. At the heart of their argument is the belief that royal titles, particularly those granted by the monarch, should come with obligations, not just privileges. One of the petition's strongest points revolves around Meghan Markle's repeated breaches of what is known as the Royal Communications Protocol. This long-standing tradition, followed by working royals for generations, requires discretion in public statements, particularly when made abroad. Royals are expected to avoid political topics, limit personal criticism of the monarchy, and refrain from making any claims that could compromise the Crown's diplomatic neutrality. The House of Lords petition accuses Meghan of violating this protocol multiple times. Her podcast, Archetypes, is named specifically in the petition as an example. In the show, Meghan speaks openly about her experiences within the royal family, her views on racism, and her mental health struggles. While many listeners found these episodes insightful and empowering, the petition argues that such personal accounts, when made under the banner of the Duchess of Sussex, blur the line between private citizen and royal figure. To those inside Parliament, the concern isn't what she said, but the platform and title under which it was said. The argument becomes even more complicated when one considers how these statements affect the monarchy's image abroad. The Commonwealth, made up of former British colonies, includes a diverse range of nations, many of which are sensitive to discussions around race, history, and colonialism. When Meghan made her allegations in the 2021 Oprah interview, claiming that a senior royal had expressed concern about her child's skin tone, there was an immediate international response. Some Commonwealth countries began questioning their relationship with the Crown, with public officials in places like Jamaica and Australia openly discussing the possibility of becoming republics. The House of Lords maintains that while free speech is protected, using a royal title to make such explosive claims creates a level of influence that private citizens do not usually hold. In their view, the title adds weight to the words, and therefore extra responsibility. Meghan's critics argue that it's not about silencing her, but about whether a title granted by the Crown can be used as a platform for critique without consequence. The petition then moves into the area of commercialization. It claims that Meghan and Harry's use of their titles in connection with media deals, public speaking arrangements, and charitable projects amounts to a form of brand marketing. Specific reference is made to the Netflix series and Spotify podcast, as well as the couple's now discontinued attempt to trademark Sussex Royal. While those business ventures have not broken any commercial laws, they raise ethical and constitutional concerns. Should a royal title, created to reflect duty to the nation, be allowed to exist alongside product launches and paid entertainment deals? Adding weight to the argument, the petition outlines how previous royal family members have handled their status. Figures such as Princess Alexandra, the Duke of Kent, and the late Prince Philip maintained decades of public service without ever turning their titles into personal brands. These royals, the Lords argue, upheld the dignity of their positions by remaining largely apolitical and focused on service. The implication is clear. Titles should not be about image. They should be about responsibility. The petition also references Meghan's Nigeria trip, which has become a central example of what Parliament calls unauthorized diplomacy. Although it was billed as a private visit, Meghan and Harry's conduct during the trip, holding meetings with military leaders, giving speeches, and appearing in traditional diplomatic settings, mirrored that of official royal tours. According to insiders, neither the Foreign Office nor Buckingham Palace was consulted in advance. For some in Parliament, this incident represented a serious overstep. It created confusion about who Meghan and Harry were representing, and whether they had any official sanction to engage in that kind of international presence. Diplomatic misrepresentation is not a light issue. The UK relies on careful coordination between the Crown, Parliament, and foreign institutions to maintain its international relationships. When former royals appear in other countries using noble titles while engaging in quasi-diplomatic activities, it introduces risks that go beyond media narratives. Parliament is now taking those risks seriously. In addition to political and legal concerns, the petition also cites widespread public sentiment as a reason for action. Public polling has shown that a significant majority of British citizens support removing Meghan Markle's title, with many also questioning whether Prince Harry should retain his. This level of public support has given the Lords additional confidence to proceed with formal discussions. According to commentators close to the royal family, this moment represents a larger shift in how Britain thinks about its institutions. Titles, once seen as largely ceremonial or symbolic, are being re-examined through the lens of accountability and relevance. The monarchy has endured for centuries by evolving carefully with the times. Now, under King Charles III's reign, the question is whether the Crown will act to reinforce the principles its titles are meant to represent. Despite the growing pressure, the royal household has continued its policy of silence. Neither King Charles nor Prince William has made a public statement regarding the petition or the broader discussion, but it's widely believed that conversations are taking place behind the scenes. Insiders suggest that William, in particular, is deeply invested in protecting the long-term integrity of the institution, even if that means making difficult decisions about family. The king, for his part, has reportedly taken a more cautious approach. Having long preferred to stay out of controversy, Charles may be weighing whether allowing Parliament to take the lead on this issue offers a strategic benefit. If the House of Lords succeeds in stripping the title, the monarchy can avoid appearing overly punitive while still achieving a clearer distinction between those who serve the crown and those who do not. The larger constitutional point raised by the petition is not about punishment, it's about preservation. If titles granted by the monarch can be used freely for business, media, or personal gain without oversight, what do they really represent? For centuries, noble titles have carried expectations of duty, sacrifice, and public service. The concern among lords is that if those expectations aren't enforced, the titles themselves lose meaning. The petition concludes by stating that allowing Meghan Markle, now a private American citizen, to continue using the Duchess of Sussex title undermines the honor system at its core. It's not about nationality, they argue. It's about the relationship between the crown and the people. Titles are not just labels. They are symbols of trust. If that trust is broken or commercialized, then action must be taken to preserve the system as a whole. This perspective has resonated across party lines and among a wide section of the public. It has also forced a broader reflection on the future of the royal family, particularly in an age where fame, branding, and media visibility often carry more weight than tradition. Meghan and Harry represent a new kind of public figure, one that blends royalty with celebrity. But Parliament is now asking whether the two can or should coexist.